At ASCO 2020, we had an update on the ALTA-1L study. Now, as you already know, there are two really good next-generation ALK inhibitors, alectinib and brigatinib. One was assessed versus crizotinib in the ALEX study, that was alectinib. One was assessed versus crizotinib in the ALTA-1L, that was brigatinib. And they both show remarkably similar efficacy. They're both superior to crizotinib. But one of the things we started to say is, well, where does this field go next? And it's clear when you look at the experimental arms in both of these studies that there's a group of people who are in a long plateau of non-progressors. These people don't have a real pressing unmet need. They eventually progress. But the people we're most interested in is who are the people progressing before they get to that plateau? Who are the high-risk ALKs? In ALEX, we'd previously done a study and we showed that if you looked at the variant of EML4 that you had, there was a non-statistically significant trend that variant 3 was going to do worse. But in ALTA-1L, that's now statistically significant. So variant 3 seems to be one of those higher risk features. There's also something very interesting in this. So this is looking at cfDNA, which is only a subpopulation. But if you look at those who have EML4 ALK detectable in their blood, and then you look if they also have a TP53 mutation, that's an independent trend towards a worse prognosis, even within that group. So the idea of defining a high-risk group is to say that's the unmet need, that's who we need to study more in the future. What is going to be their mechanisms of acquired resistance? And what might we want to study in them to add in or to do other things? Because they're going to read out in a clinical study much quicker, not just having to wait years for these outcomes. Another presentation on brigatinib at this year's ASCO looks at one of the recognized side effects of brigatinib. So it's unique to brigatinib. Something like 3% of patients starting brigatinib will get short of breath within the first couple of days. And it's not your classical pneumonitis, because there were many anecdotal reports of patients staying on the drug and then getting better despite continued exposure. This is a relatively small study looking at detailed pulmonary function tests in the first 10 patients starting brigatinib. And 9 of those 10 patients, even though they had no symptoms, dropped their DLCO. That's their ability to transfer oxygen across their lungs. And it dropped on average by about 13%. The range was between 5 and just over 30%. None of the patients had symptoms. They all dose escalated from 90 to 180 milligrams without a problem. And of all of those people who actually had follow-up up to day 15, all of them had complete reversal. Now, why does this matter? Well, instead of these early onset pulmonary events being like Russian roulette, who's going to get them? Is it going to be serious? And being slightly worrying, if you start to understand that everybody is going to drop their DLCO for a short period of time and then recover, you can start to look at the patient in front of you and say, hey, will you be able to tolerate that or not? You know, have you just had a pulmonary embolism? Have you just started an oxygen? For those patients, maybe brigatinib is not going to be their drug, or you have to use an even shallower step-up regime. Currently, it's 90 and then 180, but you can do 30 for 3 days, 60 for 3 days, 90 for 3 days, and you still get to 180 by day 10. And there are case reports of people even on the intensive care unit being able to tolerate brigatinib with that shallower step-up regime. So suddenly we go from a scary, rare, serious side effect to an entirely predictable one, and you can look at the patient in front of you and say, brigatinib, yes or no. If I'm going to use brigatinib, this is maybe the regime that I want to use if you're a higher risk, if you're not going to tolerate that temporary drop in your DLCO. The more you understand the ability to give these drugs, their side effects, their efficacy, their pill burden, you can tailor it to the patient in front of you. What we're trying to achieve, what is the achievable goal for ALK-positive lung cancer, is, in theory, perfect control of disease, normal quality of life for years. And the more options we have, the greater a chance that we can achieve that in an individual person.